Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Sweet and Maxwell, and it's on data protection law. Now the title is a long one. It's the Guide to the General Data Protection Regulation, a companion to the Data Protection Law and Practice, now in a fourth edition. It's been written by Rosemary J. Now, Elizabeth and I have looked at this publication. It comes from Sweet and Maxwell and the Thomson Reuters organisation. And for our book review title, we gave it the following: Data still remains the big issue for a better informed public. So this companion guide makes all the difference. And that, in my view, certainly, and that of Elizabeth, is what the position is. Because I think with a society that is far more well informed about what's going on, and the control of data itself being such an emotive issue, we've had to have this sort of regulation, irrespective of whether we are inside or outside the European Union, because I suggest to you that this is a much wider issue and will continue to be a much wider global issue because of the impact of things like the internet and the way in which we now conduct our business and the information which is available to people. So we've had to have regulation. Now this is the interesting cover. It looks like bubbles. There's the guide to the General Data Protection Regulation itself. As you can see, there's the spine, and then there's a bit of blurb on the back, and I've referred to a bit of the information that's on the back cover there in the book review itself. Now the review runs to something approaching 470 odd pages, and you can see from the index at the back it's by paragraph numbering. Therefore you should be able to find things quite quickly. It's a detailed index at the back, and of course because it's Sweet and Maxwell, there is their legal taxonomy at the back which sets out how they've created and how you use the index. Now going to the front of the book, there is the front page there. And then these are the individuals who are involved in this book as well. Rosemary has given the main publication from the first edition, but other people involved: William Malcolm, Ellis Parry, Louise Townsend and Anita Bapap. Now obviously they are mentioned. I'm mentioning them there. They're not mentioned in the in some of the other information, but the preface is also of very great use. The preface was written by Elizabeth Denham, who will be known to you. She's the Information Commissioner for the UK, and she wrote the preface in January 2017, which sets out where we are. I'm recording this in the middle of 2017. Then there's an introduction with some acknowledgements, again from the editor, Rosemary. And then you can see the structure of the table of contents with the names of the people who've been involved in producing the information. You can see running through all of the names and some of the people. I've mentioned some of the other names so that you've got some idea of who's been involved in contributing. You can see there's a substantial amount of contents all the way through with the different names. And as you see, it's running through because there's a lot of detail here. 21 chapters in total, and what I do like is there are some nice conclusions to some of the chapters, which I do think helps, because this is not an easy area to understand, and I think it's been made far more complex than it should be, but that's the same with a lot of things. Table of cases there, and then after that, not that many cases. Then you've got, after that, the European Community legislation, as it's called here, and then after that, moving on from that to some statutory instruments, not very many, and there are actually Commission and Council directives which are also listed, decisions rather listed, then some tables of statutes, and then you get into the main book itself. Chapter 1, background, paragraph numbering at the sides, some information concerning subheadings, and some footnoting all the way through. And you can see running through, there's not a lot of footnoting, you'll be pleased to hear. There's some, you can see a little bit at the bottom there, but not too much. And good examples of breaches, for instance, this is dealing with breaches leading to fines. So again, important area because of course it's about regulation. So with regulation comes breaching and the discipline that goes with it. Now, let me tell you a bit about this book for those of you who are new to it. Excuse me. I actually am registered under the Data Protection Act and therefore control the information I have. I have to, as a barrister, do that. And therefore I have to be aware at any given time about the data protection laws that exist. I'm not an expert on them, and I don't profess to be, but at least I have some idea of where we are, and I've not really had very much, fortunately, to do with the practical side of this. But let me talk specifically about why we need this book and what the book is all about, because the problem with many books which cover data protection laws is their sheer complexity, and frankly they can be very boring to read. Happily, this is not the case with the new 4th edition on data protection regulation from the excellent data expert Rosemary J. She gives us, as practitioners, advisors and lay persons, a comprehensive, authoritative and steadfastly clear coverage of the new EU General Data Protection Regulation, with practical commentary on how it will impact on Britain at a national level, notwithstanding what data protection law will look like in a post-EU United Kingdom as the day of Brexit dawns just round the corner. And believe me, it's the middle of 2017 already, and before we know where we are, we could well be in a very different, to use the word scenario, landscape, whatever you talk. We are going to be facing different things. I don't think a lot of this will change immediately, but I think in the long term there could be quite a lot of big changes afoot. So the work is intended as a companion to the Data Protection Law and Practice, the 4th edition, and the volumes are a must for all involved in data protection issues in our ever more complex society, and that's certainly the case, and I think anybody involved in data protection should be aware of this book and certainly have a good look at it. As the author says, the key and sole focus of this title is the General Data Protection Regulation, and we found that this new edition provides a detailed and standalone account of the most significant development in UK data protection law since the 1998 Act itself, and it's an invaluable point of reference for anybody involved in data protection law, from the specialist to the generalist. And as I've said before, I think this will have applicability beyond just the legal community because of the nature of what's in this book. Now, the book, of course, covers the EU General Data Protection Regulation 2016/679, and that's the new legal landscape arising from it and how it is expected to apply at a national level. It's not such an easy task, of course, at a time of change and increasing legal complexity. And as Jay acknowledges, the work has been something of a challenge to bring to completion because of the detail and complexity of the subject. And it covers, of course, the structure and scope of the regulation, including its extended territorial reach, which has been the main issue, of course, of many Brexiteers for some years. And we won't go down that road now. Jay acknowledges that she's been most fortunate to have substantial contributions from colleagues as she reviews the new legal obligations on data processors and affecting processor contracts and the impact of these changes on contractual arrangements, which is basically a complex area of interest to lawyers, of course, and as I've said before, it has a wider implication too, and a use as well. There is also a useful examination of the new and expanded definitions in use, which will benefit those new to the subject. And I'm always conscious with these books that we review that there'll be a lot of people who know about the books, but there'll also be a large number of newly qualified people or newer people to the area I'm discussing and talking about who won't know a great deal about it. And one of the purposes of these reviews is to basically explain what these books are about and why they are of some help. It's not trying to flog the book itself, it's more telling people, look, this is what this book is about and this is why it will help you. Because I certainly found in the early years as practice as a barrister that I was floundering to a certain extent because I knew where to look, but I was needing to get that extra information. I didn't have YouTube at that time to assist. So as I say, what you've got is the useful examination of new and expanded definitions, and they will be of benefit because it covers personal data, profiling, pseudonymization, in other words, using pseudonyms and the way that goes, filing systems, consent, enterprise, and a group of undertakings which are included for ease of reference, which will be a substantial assistance, I think, to office staff. So, as I say, it has a more general application. The aim throughout the new edition, as far as the author is concerned, has been to build towards a better understanding of the regulation. And so she then analyses the novel significant obligations on data controllers and data processors, including breach notification and the extended rights of individuals. And I think the breach bit, which is clearly quite noticeable in the title itself, I think that is very, very helpful to a lot of people, because there's always the concern about what the implications of a breach will be. And of course, Jay then goes on to explain the extensive powers of regulators, including the ability to impose very significant fines and mandatory orders on a pan-EU basis. Now, obviously, we are still in the EU and will remain connected with this for some years to come, so don't expect it all to go immediately. And what she does is she examines in depth the wording of the one-stop shop and the role of the European Data Protection Board. And as I say, Brexiteer or nay, whatever the position you might hold, this book is important, because whilst a lot of us resent what has happened, the fact is we have this regime and we have to know what to do with it. And I think what Rosemary J has done is given us a great deal of additional help. Let me conclude by saying that her mission, in our view, is to place the new rules in the broader current context, including discussion of the Schrems decision and the US-EU Privacy Shield. Now, that's something, again, which is going to be looked at, I'm sure, in the next few years. We've just had the G20, which arrived at some very interesting conclusions and also, of course, disagreements. But I think, again, the US-EU Privacy Shield is an area we're going to be looking at and revisiting. And what Jay does is brilliant, in my view, because she actually covers the ground very well. And if we can say so without too much hyperbole, she brings the subject matter alive for the many who will find this area of law intensely boring and dull. So thank you, Rosemary, very much indeed, because it's an area which I know from my colleagues, they don't like talking about it and they're on a mile rather than deal with any of this. But I do think it's very important to have these books to assist us, and that's exactly what Sweet and Maxwell do for us. So thank you to all concerned. And the publication date, as I say, is 2017. Let's have a look at the book again. There's the front of it. Those are the people who are involved. I haven't put them in the body copy of the actual review, but I'm very grateful to all of them for what they've done. As I say, the law basically is as stated at January 2017, around about that time. Now, just having a look, we've got some practical implications here on data processors, which again I think is important, because whilst this is for lawyers, I mean, there isn't that much case law. I think this has, as I said before, a much wider application, and that's dealing with people who process the data. Then rights of objection, the right to erasure of data. Very important area. I didn't want to cover that in the review in too much detail, but getting rid of data, as you know from Google and everything else, that is become a big issue, and is going to remain a big issue, I think. Then there are all sorts of exemptions, special circumstances, then fines and so forth. Altogether, a very good book, and I'm very grateful to Rosemary for putting the work in, because I think it's a tremendous amount of effort that's been put into this book. So thank you very much to all concerned, and good luck with your data processing. Bye-bye.